MAVAKAGA.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. This time, we're going to be diving deep into Oswald Cobblepot, and specifically his grand finale in the HBO series, The Penguin. So if you haven't seen it, definitely go check it out.
Okay.
But yeah, we're going to be talking about all the shocking twists and turns as Penguin rises to power in Gotham. To help us break it all down, we've got an amazing video that really dives into the finale, and it doesn't shy away from any of the really WTF moments. So get ready for some surprises.
What's so fascinating about this finale is how it blends those familiar elements from classic gangster films, like think Scarface, but then it layers in this really in-depth psychological exploration of Penguin's character. It's like watching a mob movie, but through this really Freudian lens.
Okay, so speaking of Freudian, let's talk about Penguin's mom.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of us going to this show maybe had this image of her as being, you know, kind of a frail, almost innocent figure. But this finale drops a major truth bomb that completely flips that whole relationship on its head.
Totally. The finale reveals that Penguin's mother, Frances, actually knew all along that he was responsible for his brother's deaths. And it's not just that she suspected it. She had confirmation. She even discussed it with the former mob boss, Rex Calabrese.
She knew for sure. That's insane.
It really is. And what's even more messed up is that Calabrese advised her to either exploit Penguin or cut him loose, which heavily implies, getting rid of him altogether.
Wow. So knowing this now kind of reframes every interaction they had throughout the series. All those times Penguin was looking for his mother's love and approval, he was actually trying to earn it from someone who saw him as a monster.
Right. It's like he's desperately seeking validation from someone who already views him as guilty. It's this tragic irony that really adds a whole other layer of complexity to their relationship.
It makes you wonder how that knowledge or lack thereof shaped Penguin's entire life. Was he always seeking her approval? Because deep down he felt this immense guilt and needed her to absolve him.
That's a really interesting point. I mean, it's possible that on a subconscious level, he felt this need to overcompensate for his actions. Or maybe he was drawn to powerful figures like Calabrese and even his own mother, because he craved that sense of validation and control that he lacked as a child.
Yeah. He was trying to rewrite his origin story.
Yeah.
But with a happier ending. But instead of finding redemption, he just keeps digging himself deeper and deeper. It's darkness.
And speaking of digging deeper, the video does a great job of charting Penguin's rise to power. It's a classic gangster tale, with the betrayals.
And the alliances.
But it also has these really fascinating psychological elements woven throughout.
I agree. This series does a fantastic job of showing how Penguin basically exploits the chaos in Gotham. Following the events of the Batman, he eliminates rivals, he forms new alliances, and he's just really playing the game better than anyone else. And as he gains more power, we also see this visual transformation. He trades in his beat-up car for a flashy Rolls Royce. He starts dressing in a more comic book accurate way. It's almost like he's finally embracing this role of the supervillain.
Yeah, it's like he's becoming the Penguin. That we all know from the comics.
Right. But even as he's achieving all of this, the series doesn't shy away from showing the emotional price he pays along the way.
Yeah.
It's like that saying, every victory followed by defeat, because it's so much deeper than that.
Definitely. I think one of the central themes of the finale is that Penguin's victories often directly lead to his losses. For example, his mother ends up in a vegetative state because of his actions. He's forced to kill his close friend Victor to eliminate a potential weakness. It's like he's constantly sabotaging himself, even as he climbs to the top.
Yeah, so it's not just fate or bad luck. It's like there's something driving him to make these destructive choices, almost like he doesn't believe he deserves happiness or stability.
Exactly, and this is where understanding the concept of denial, which is a common psychological defense mechanism, becomes really important. Penguin is confronted with this horrific truth about his mother, but he just can't accept it. He clings to this image of the loving mother he's constructed in his mind, even though the reality is crumbling around him.
So he's choosing to live in this fantasy world rather than face the painful truth. It's like he's afraid that if he lets go of that illusion, he'll completely fall apart.
Right. Denial serves a purpose in that. It protects him from the overwhelming pain and guilt he would feel if he fully acknowledged his mother's rejection. But it's also a dangerous coping mechanism because it prevents him from actually dealing with the root of his issues.
So he's achieved this goal of ruling Gotham, but he's still trapped in this cycle of self-destruction. It's really tragic. And then to make things even more unsettling, the series introduces this whole twisted dynamic with Eve Carlo, who basically becomes this living doll for Penguin to control.
Yeah, this is where the series takes a dark turn into psychological horror. Eve, dressed as Penguin's mother, is fulfilling this deeply disturbing fantasy for him. It's not just about power or control anymore. It's about him trying to recreate this warped version of the mother-son bond he never had.
Okay, that's seriously messed up. But before we go down that rabbit hole, let's talk about Sofia Falcone for a minute.
Yeah.
She definitely went out with a bang.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah. Sophia's arc is interesting because she's like this dark reflection of Penguin. They both come from these powerful families. They both crave power and vengeance. But she ultimately chooses a very different path.
Yeah. The video talks about how burning down her father's mansion was symbolic of her breaking free from the past.
Correct.
And then there's that letter she gets from Selina Kyle, confirming that they're related, which adds this whole other layer to her story.
Right. It shows that even in Gotham's underworld, there's potential for change and even redemption. It makes you wonder if Sofia might end up as more of an anti-hero in the future, maybe even teaming up with Batman against someone like Penguin.
Ooh, that's a good theory. But let's not get too ahead of ourselves. We still have a lot to unpack in this finale, especially when it comes to the implications for the Batman 2. So stick around, folks. We're just getting started.
It's like she's saying, I'm done with this. I'm burning all the bridges. No more Falcone legacy. No more darkness.
Yeah, it's a really powerful image. And then to add to that, there's the letter from Selina Kyle.
Yeah.
Right at the end, basically confirming that they're related.
Yeah.
Like Sofia and Catwoman. Or family. That's a whole other layer to this whole story.
It really is. It makes you think about the idea of family and how even in Gotham's underworld, there can be these unexpected connections.
Okay, well, let's get back to Penguin for a second. We were talking about how he's in denial about his mom, clinging to this idealized image of her. And then we get introduced to Eve Carlo, who's basically cosplaying as Penguin's mom. It's creepy, disturbing, but it also says a lot about where Penguin's head is at.
It's like he's trying to regain control over a situation that was always out of his control, his mother's love. By manipulating Eve, he's sort of rewriting the narrative of his childhood trauma.
So he's forcing reality to fit his fantasy. But instead of finding healing, it's just pushing him further away from any kind of real connection.
Exactly. And this goes back to that theme. A victory followed by defeat. He wins control of Gotham, but he loses his humanity in the process.
It's like he's building this empire, but he's all alone in it. You know what else I found interesting? The video makes this parallel between Rex Calabrese and Victor. They both kind of served as father figures to Penguin, people he looked up to, wanted approval from.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I hadn't thought of that.
But both of those relationships ultimately end in betrayal. So maybe that's why he's so drawn to Eve, because she's someone he can completely control.
It's like a twisted form of security, and all of this is happening right before he goes up against Batman. And the Batman 2...
This isn't the same Penguin we saw at the beginning of the series. He's a full-blown supervillain now.
And he's carrying all this baggage, all this trauma. It makes him so much more dangerous.
Okay, so we've talked about Penguin's rise to power, the psychological toll it's taken on him, his relationship with Eve. But I want to circle back to that reveal about his mother, knowing about the deaths of his brothers. The video really emphasized the psychological weight of that.
It's like his entire world is shattered. He spent his whole life trying to win his mother's love, believing that it would erase his guilt, and then he finds out that she knew all along, and that she basically despised him for it.
He goes into complete denial, clinging to this image of her that's completely at odds with reality.
Denial is a powerful thing. It lets him block out the pain, but it's not a solution. Eventually, he's going to have to confront the truth.
And when he does, it's not going to be pretty.
It's going to be explosive.
Okay. Before we start speculating too much about the Batman 2, I want to talk about the visuals in the finale. The video pointed out how Penguin's transformation is reflected in his wardrobe, his car, even his new penthouse.
It's like he's consciously stepping into the role of the supervillain. He wants everyone to see his power.
But underneath all of that, there's this emptiness that he can't seem to fill.
Exactly. The series does such a good job of showing us both sides, the ambitious mastermind and the emotionally scarred individual.
It makes you think. What happens when you achieve your ultimate goal, but it doesn't bring you happiness?
That's a question that resonates with a lot of people.
But for Penguin, the stakes are much higher.
And that brings us to Eve Carlo.
Oh yeah, this is where things get really dark, psychologically speaking.
Eve, dressed as Penguin's mother, represents a manifestation of his deepest desires and his psychological damage.
It's like he's trying to rewrite history, but in a really twisted way.
Exactly. And it highlights the fact that true healing can't come from domination and control,
Right. It has to come from
Yeah.
facing those inner demons and confronting those painful truths.
And that's something that Penguin seems completely incapable of doing.
At least for now.
Yeah, he's still trapped in this cycle of self-destruction.
So, we've talked about Penguin, his rise to power, his psychological journey, his twisted relationships. But what about Sofia Falcone? What did you make of her arc in this final season?
Sophia's a really fascinating character because she starts off so similar to Penguin in terms of her ambition, her desire for vengeance, but she ultimately chooses a very different path.
Right, like that scene where she burns down her father's mansion.
Yeah.
That was so powerful.
It was such a symbolic act, like she was purging herself of all the darkness that had been clinging to her family.
And then there's that twist
Right.
where she finds out that she's related to Selena Kyle.
Talk about a family reunion.
Yeah,
It's like even in Gotham, there's a chance for redemption, a chance for these unexpected connections.
Yeah. He gives you a little bit of hope in this otherwise pretty dark world.
Yeah.
It does, and I think it sets up some really interesting possibilities for the future.
So, we've covered a lot of ground here. Penguin's transformation, Sofia's journey, all the twists and turns of this final season. What are your final thoughts?
I think the Penguin did a brilliant job of taking this classic Batman villain and giving him depth and complexity. We see the pain behind the mask, the trauma that drives his actions. He's not just a caricature anymore.
Right. He's a fully realized character with his own motivations and his own demons.
And the series has set the stage for an epic confrontation between him and Batman in the sequel.
I can't wait to see how that plays out.
Me neither.
Well, that's about all the time we have for this deep dive into the Penguin. Thanks for joining us.
It's been a pleasure.
If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel and let us know your thoughts in the comments. Until next time, dive deep, stay curious, and keep exploring.
MAVAKAGA.